Hello, everybody. Welcome to Unravel by UniHawk. I am your host, Arisha Villani. I am the Director of Admissions for the U.S. At UniHawk, and I am joined today with Ishani, one of our UniHawk students. And we're just going to be talking to you all about admissions in general, college life, life in the U.S., U.K., Canada, and so much more. So I'm going to let Ishani introduce herself now.
Hi, I'm Ishani. I go to GEMS Modern Academy. I like to read, write, explore, and I want to go to the UK. My dream college is Oxford, and I would ideally like to study psychology.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So I also studied psychology.
That's
so we're
great.
gonna have a lot to talk about,
Yeah.
which is awesome. So you're gonna get a couple of different perspectives here. Ishani's a student who wants to go to college soon. I am a counselor who helps students, with the college process. But also, I recently graduated from college too. I went to the U.S. I studied at Baylor University in Texas. I studied psychology and business.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah, we can definitely have some conversations about that. And it's just a really cool experience, honestly, wherever you go. So I feel like this will be fun. So let's get started.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So this will be very conversational. So I will be asking you questions, but feel free to ask me questions too, so we can give the listeners kind of perspectives from, all of our expertise. Okay. So discussing fields that we want to go into. How did you pick psychology?
Honestly, my entire life I've been a very big fan of true crime, of basically how everything in your human mind works. So I guess I picked psychology because it's something that really focuses on that aspect. It focuses on what in our mind really prompts us to do our actions. So I guess that's why I chose psychology as a field.
Yeah, that's awesome. Do you have like a favorite podcast or a favorite show that got you into this?
Yeah, I love the Beer Biceps. I make sure to listen to him every single day.
That's amazing. Yeah. Okay, and then on TikTok, do you see those true crime documentaries? I'm obsessed with those.
Yeah.
They're very fun.
Yeah.
I really love psychology, and the way I got into it was Grey's Anatomy, unfortunately. But it's so interesting because, it really shows you that the medical field, there's so much to do with it. So you can go into the psychology aspect of it, but then you can also go into forensics, which is what you're obviously looking at. And you can go into counseling, which is what I'm doing right now, right? So there's so many different pathways, which I think is so amazing. Yeah. So how do you feel like your UniHawk counselor kind of helped you really engaged with the psychology field in general?
So I believe that my UniHawk counselor really helped me engage in psychology. She's been teaching me a lot about how psychology in general works, what are the various fields you can go to, how exactly to approach those fields. So that is something that I didn't really know how to go about previously. So she's really helped me a lot in that aspect, and how exactly to choose a field in psychology that I'm extremely interested in.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you go to GEMS Modern, where a lot of people are wanting to study a lot of different things, right? I've had a lot of students from GEMS Modern too who are going to computer science or business or economics. So at least from a perspective of a 15-year-old, how are you and your friends going about this process? Because I'm sure your mind changes like every day.
Yeah. So one day I want to do psychology, the other day I want to do economics, and third day I want to do something in medicine.
Of course. It's the different shows we watch, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
So I guess it's mostly that even though I have my mind set on psychology right now, it's not set in concrete, right? So I guess I'm still exploring other pathways of what I might do, what I might want to do, and I'm just keeping my mind open. So by the end, when I actually have to apply to a specific college, to a specific course, I have all my options open, and then I can really just see what I'm interested in and go about it that way.
Definitely. So it's really good to know also for our listeners that for the UK and Europe, you do have to kind of solidify our pathway by the time we're 17, 18, by the time we're applying for college, because we're going to go into a strict field where there is a lack of flexibility in terms of switching majors, right? I would like to say I chose the United States because I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I actually went in for biology pre-medical. So I did that for 2 years, and then I realized I really didn't enjoy going to my classes. I didn't enjoy physics, I didn't enjoy chemistry, but what I really, really enjoyed was my psychology classes. So I think that the US does offer that flexibility, which is really nice, but you're gonna have these next 2 years years basically to like choose what you want to do and explore through your classes. Do you want to tell us the classes you chose?
So I'm currently doing the IB curriculum.
Nice.
And so I'm going to start in like this September, and my HLs are economics, psychology, and math AI. Then my SLs are health, sports and exercise science, English and Lang SL, and then German AB and issue.
That's awesome. Okay, so let's talk about IB for a second because a lot of UniHawk students do IB. I did IB. It's very intense, right?
Yeah.
So what are some questions maybe you have about the IB system? I just did it also.
I think, how do you manage it all? Because they're like, I feel when you're studying an IB curriculum, you see two kinds of people, right? You see the ones who are like making TikToks about how hard IB is and spending their time doing that.
Yes.
And then they're the ones who are actually studying and, doing all of that.
Yeah.
So like, which one is true?
How do you succeed?
Yeah, how do you succeed, more or less?
Yeah, definitely. I will always tell my students, I don't think I've cried more than when I was in IB, even more than college. IB is really intense, you know? It is not easy in any way. You could try to take the easiest courses, and even then, there's your 3 HLs, your 3 SLs, then you have extended essay, and you have the internal assessments, you have CAS, you have theory of knowledge. That's just a couple of things, and I'm sure I forgot a few.
Yeah, and then people also take like 4 HLs, which is absolutely crazy.
It's crazy, but sometimes if you can do it, why not? So I always say, do as much as you can in IB. It's never going to be perfect, but of course, IB really lets you find your strong suits, right? Yeah. So your HLs are the classes that you're going to be more passionate about, and the classes that you're going to put more effort into because you will be attending those classes more. For your SLs, you just get to learn a lot more than you normally learn. So maybe you wouldn't take German if you were in the A-level system, right?
Yeah.
But now you get this opportunity to learn a language, and it's amazing because when we go to college, you will be able to cancel out or equalize classes when you get there. So I think the IB is very hard. Those TikToks you've heard, I agree with all of them. It's very, very intense.
Yeah.
But I will say that I got so many courses cut out in the US when I went there because I did fairly well on my IB grades, on my IB finals. And also it just prepares you in terms of how intense it is. It's supposed to be college level courses.
Yeah.
So it really prepares you for the US. So is it manageable? You have to make it manageable, right?
Yeah, that's true.
I think a big piece of advice was, I'm a very social person. I don't give up spending time with my friends. But since all of us took IB, we would spend time together, study together, and that would be our hangout, instead of being able to go to the mall. So we just have to give and take, but we just have to manage our time. Definitely spend equal amounts of effort for your SL classes because it's all IB points, right? So your HL classes, yes, it's worth more on your GPA, but for your just IB points, it's all out of 42.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Plus the 3 points. So I would just say that just manage your time, but don't give up your mental health. Don't give up your friends. Don't give up family time. Just be able to maybe get organized, use a planner, and spend time with your family and friends, but study at the same time.
Okay, that's great advice.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. So any other questions though that you have about the IB system or even other curriculums?
Honestly, not really. So I actually have a question outside of the IB system for you. How was college life in the US for you?
Yeah, so college life in the US was so much fun. So I will say, I got to also study abroad for a semester in London for 6 months. And it was completely different than college life in the US for me. I think IB really prepared me in terms of getting to be able to do well in my classes. It was a lot of classes that you have to take in one semester. I took 6 classes in a semester. So it was the same thing as IB, but I was taking it on a campus. But my mom and dad were not there to tell me to study. And my friends were taking complete opposite classes from me. They were in business majors or, technology majors, and I was doing bio pre-med at the beginning. And so no one was really pushing me. So I had to be pushing myself. But the really fun thing was the environment around me at Baylor was pushing me at the same time. So everyone knew that I'm actually I wake up very late and I sleep very late. So it's not really good habits that we want for our students, but I'm guilty to also be doing that. But I would make sure that I would study in the evening time, and then I would be able to maybe hang out with my friends right before I start studying or maybe after I study, but I would have a designated schedule for when I had to go to the library and manage my time there. And then outside of that, Baylor would just offer offer us things to do. They would offer us traditions, so football games to go to. They would offer us spirit events. They would offer us sororities and organizations. I was very close to home in a way because I was a part of like the South Asian organization. So, I stayed a part of that, just not feel homesick. And then I also joined like a sorority where I got to help with like philanthropic activities and help high schools around the area. And I got to make really cool friends because of it. So I think it was cool because high school really got me to be able to manage college in a way.
So how hard was it getting into a US college?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I would say that even at UniHawk, what we really emphasize is like a balanced college list. We want to make sure we apply to the reach schools that are really hard, that are our dreams, then to the target schools that really just fit into what we are right now. So, if we're getting 5s and 6s in IB, then maybe our target schools are going to be different than if we were getting all 7s or all 4s. So target meaning ideally we should get into that school, right? And then safety schools. So safety schools are the schools that are a lot easier to get into, and they are kind of there as your safety net in case the other, rankings don't work out. Baylor was my target to safety school. It was not my reach school, but one thing that I really had to emphasize during my application to my counselor was that I really needed scholarship. So that's the way I chose my school. Okay. Baylor offered me half of tuition off. So I got 50% off of tuition. I was an international student. We'll talk about this later. But it's hard to get scholarships and financial aid as like a non-citizen of the country we're applying to. So because my focus was scholarships and Baylor offered me so much, it was kind of an easy choice. It was really good for what I wanted to do, which was the sciences. And then they provided me the financial assistance that I needed. I also became really close friends with the counselor at Baylor who would come to visit Dubai every single year, and he would do school presentations, and he would just go around Dubai, and he really took importance in meeting me and then meeting my parents and teaching us all about Baylor and just making sure with them and to me that I would be comfortable there. And because he took so much effort in getting to know me and making me love the school so much, the choice really felt easy. Yeah.
So what is it about like standardized tests? As a student, when I research about colleges in the US, I've been hearing a lot about standardized tests. So the SATs, the ACTs, obviously the IELTS, the TOEFL, and other such tests. And it's at one point, it was just so pressuring that I got so confused. Like, what test do I actually need to take? Do I need to take the SAT for every single course I'm applying for, or do I just take the ACT? Obviously, I need the IELTS, but that's just really mind-boggling in a way.
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the things that turned me away from the US. But could you just shed some light on it?
So I want to know, what do you think right now, so I can kind of demystify what you think.
So for me, it's like if you want to get into a college in the US, obviously you need to give a whole list of standardized tests. So I guess it's based on your course, maybe. I'm not exactly too familiar with that. Sure. But from what I've heard, the SATs are supposed to be very hard to score. And I guess, that's what I know right now.
So there's only really the SAT/ACT. You take either one of those, and then you can take a English standardized test, meaning the IELTS, the TOEFL, or the Duolingo test. IELTS and TOEFL are accepted by everybody, and the Duolingo test is accepted by most schools. So that one is online. It's very easy compared to the other two, but all three of those tests are very, not too difficult to manage also. And also at UniHawk, obviously we support with all of those things, right? But in terms of understanding how important these tests are, a lot of times if you are in HL English, if you're taking A-levels English, or if you're just, in a school that has English speaking curriculum, which most of us are, we won't even need to do those English speaking tests. So that kind of, we don't really have to worry about too much, but I always recommend there might just be one school at the end that's saying, hey, where's your TOEFL? And we want it, and we don't want to cram at the end to do those tests. So I always say just do it. It's very easy. And of course we support with the whole thing too. So just take the test. It's just you speaking English, which, you all are very confident at already. And in terms of the SAT and ACT, I will say, I always recommend my students to do it. I do.
Okay.
But it's not the end of the world if you're not good at it. I was an IB student. I was not good at the SAT because what we learn in IB is
it's
essay
completely
writing,
different,
right? It's not multiple choice testing. I like to say that the SAT is a test made for students to fail. It's not because the content is hard. The content's not difficult. You know what you're doing on paper.
Yeah.
If you just had more time, you would get a better grade. And what we teach in our classes also is just kind of how to hack the SAT, you know, like how can we take the test in that short amount of time that we have and kind of cancel out the choices rather than picking the right one. So we teach tips and tricks more than we're teaching content. Content's important, and of course we support with that too, but I always tell my students, learn the content, learn it at school, learn it through prep classes, but learn how to understand the test and go about the test. If you do not score within the rankings of the school, so you can go to, just for example, Baylor University, SAT ranking on Google, and it'll show you what the ranking is. Let's say you used to have to score between a 1250 and a 1360. Let's just say that's their median bracket. If you're scoring an 1100, I would not recommend that you send the SAT score. And if you are scoring higher than the bracket, of course, send it. Of course. Yeah. But if you don't score within the bracket, I think it's okay. This last application cycle with my students, a lot of them went test optional because they didn't score the SAT test they wanted. They got great scores in IB, but their SAT was not reflecting that academic excellence that they have, you know? So I told them, let's go test optional, and they got into phenomenal schools. In fact, I helped a student get into Brown also who did not submit the SAT. So I definitely would say, yes, it's important, definitely, but it's not required, it's not mandatory, and it should not be stopping you from getting into the US. Okay, and for Canada, not much is required. It's really just the English-speaking test. They would love the IELTS, and TOEFL is also accepted by some schools. And the UK, as you know, there's different tests for different courses, so that's where courses comes in, right? So if you're doing medicine, you need the UCAT test. You're going to need the IELTS for every school because you're an international student. And the only way that you would not need to take the IELTS, TOEFL, Duolingo is if you have a passport from an English-speaking country. So Ireland, Australia, America, Canada, and that applies to all of the countries. But I think UK is where it's more course specific in terms of standardized testing. Okay, so what about your extracurriculars? Because from what I've heard, the US is way more extracurricular focused than other countries like Canada, UK, Australia. Definitely. So in Canada and UK specifically, they are definitely more predicted grades heavy, just academics heavy in general. So if you're not making the grades for the cutoff, you know, you've heard the story of they got a predicted grade and then they got their offer and then they didn't meet it in the finals, right? The US isn't conditional like that because they base your application off of so many parts of you. So they want to look at your extracurriculars, they want to look at your essays, they want to look at your academics, they want to look at your SAT, they want to look at anything you have, maybe awards, maybe extra courses you've done. So they just care about you as a person and as a whole rather than your academic profile only. So extracurriculars is very important because when you're doing IB and you are going to go home and you are going to study and it's going to be very long nights, they want to know that she can do volleyball on top of all that. She can do leadership on top of all that. Like she is killing it outside the classroom and inside the classroom, right? Because in your profile, we're not going to write, I studied for 4 hours in the night. I studied for 6 hours in the night. You know, we can't write these things. So they know you're studying. They know, I promise. But on top of you studying, on top of you attending those really hard classes, you need to just be able to be involved. The way I go about extracurriculars is I tell my students, explore in grade 9. Explore as much as you want. Do 100 different activities. And in 10th grade, drop half of those. It's okay. You're not going to like all 20 of the activities you're doing, right? In 10th grade, drop half of those and keep exploring. See what you really like. Then in 11th grade, we'll drop a couple of more and then we'll move into higher positions of our grade 10 activities. So we will have that continuation from grade 9 to grade 12, but we'll keep escalating. So maybe in MUN, we start as a delegate. Then in second year, we win best speech. Then in third year, we win chair, you know? And then in the fourth year, we're hosting the MUN conference. So it's kind of just elevating in terms of what we do. So we want to show dedication, continuation, and we want to show passion because the US really cares about your extracurriculars. It can pick you up if your grades are not that great. But for the UK and for Europe and for Canada, extracurriculars are parts of your essay that goes in, you know? So we get to talk about, I want to do medicine and I've done Medical Insights Club. I have done this really awesome internship at the hospital. So we get to say it and we get to talk about it. And in the US, there is literally a extracurricular like aspect of the Common App where we have to put a certain amount of activities. So in the UK, again, more academic heavy, but extracurriculars are amazing and you should do them. And then for the US, extracurriculars are like as good as your academics are.
So what about financial aid, scholarships, especially with financial aid? Do you really go for financial aid? Because like right now, when you're researching about financial aid, in my mind, it's more like a debt. It's more like a loan that, once you graduate, you're going to have to pay that back. And I know I've heard a lot of horror stories where people have faced a lot of problems repaying them.
Of course, definitely. So I think the one thing international students don't really have to worry about in terms of America, at least, is that they won't give you loans, unfortunately. They won't even give that to you. So scholarships are wonderful for every country because you don't really have to apply for that. They give it to you on a silver platter. So if you are a good student, they will hand you scholarships. I didn't apply for any scholarships for Baylor. They said you won the Dean Scholarship just because of my profile. And then I was really close to my counselor at Baylor over there that he said, hey, by the way, there are some internal ones you can apply to, and I'll tell you about that. But in terms of just getting the scholarship from the school, like you got full ride or you got half scholarship or whatever, they just hand it to you when you submit your application. That's all it is. So there's nothing to it. It's just if they like you, they will hand you the scholarship. That could depend on your academics. It could depend on your extracurriculars. I've had students with very weak academic scores, but their essays were flawless and their extracurriculars were amazing, and their profile, their interviews, everything they did was so capturing that of course they got the scholarship. So their grades didn't even matter at that point, right? So scholarships are really just handed to you and they're granted to you. There are external scholarships you can apply for. Again, some religious communities give out scholarships. Some schools give out scholarships. It's just external, so wherever you can find. There's a lot of websites that allow you also to explore these scholarship options. A lot of them are for US citizens or UK citizens or Canadian citizens. So we just have to keep that in mind as international students. I've been through the process. It's very rough, but the good thing is that schools grant scholarships, okay? Then financial aid is something different. Financial aid is when you're telling them, I cannot go to your school without money, okay? So with scholarships, they don't know your financial status at all. They're just saying you could be, very much able to afford my school. You could not be able to afford my school at all. I don't know anything, but I'm going to give you money because you're awesome. So that's how scholarship works. But in terms of financial aid, they know your status. You kind of get put into a different pile of applications. Okay. And yes, as international students, it does hinder your chances a little bit of getting into the US. And that is just a little bit of common knowledge. But it's unfortunate, but if it is what you have to do, then we have to apply. It's something called a CSS profile. It's where international students apply for financial aid. If you are American, on the other hand, you can apply for FAFSA and CSS, and you are need blind, meaning they will put your application in the same pile as everyone else and they won't care that you need money. The international students are not need blind. There's a couple of schools in the US that are need blind. Harvard, Yale, I think Amherst College, and there should be one more. Like 4 or 5 schools are need blind in the US. The rest, thousands, are not. And in the UK and Canada, it's kind of the same way. And of course, scholarships are granted there. But then in terms of getting financial aid, it's a complete different process. And so, you are a lot less likely to get that aid. But again, Canada and UK might be cheaper options than the US in general for some majors. Mm-hmm. So it's definitely 2 different things, financial aid and scholarships. But scholarships is a gift. Financial aid is us asking. It's kind of the bigger difference. Okay. Yeah. And so how do you kind of go about, this process? Because if you are wanting to get scholarship and stuff, is that kind of why you chose the UK, or like, what is your thought process on that?
Yes, that was actually one of my very big reasons to choose UK, because again, it's easier, education is much more cheaper there. So that was one of my major reasons for choosing UK. Definitely. Because it's more like I don't want to burden my parents with that much amount of money. Exactly. So I'm pretty sure a semester in the US would be how much, like 100,000 dirhams maybe?
In dollars, it's like at least, it's like $40,000. Yeah. So maybe even more. Yeah. So what are you curious about in terms of college? I know you asked me, how do you, give me specific questions. What do you want to know about college life? Because I went to college.
So what do you do for fun? Obviously you hang out with your friends, but it's okay, you're in college, you're like an adult now. Yes. So how does it differ from what do you do for fun in high school versus what do you do for fun in college?
Well, I think the first thing that's really fun is you don't have curfew, And, that's not to scare the parents or anything, but it's just to say you have so much freedom in college. And I think that's like really fun. You're getting to explore the city you live in. You've never lived there before. So let's say you go to Oxford. You've never really lived in Oxford before, right?
Yeah.
You've been in Dubai your whole life. So being in a city and being able to explore every part of it, whether that means restaurants, whether that means hiking, whether that means going to see your friends at an organization club. So anything that you do is like a new adventure in college, what I loved about my school is that they had a lot of traditions that we followed. So I met my best friend at something that they had a build your own crepe night. It was, just something like cringy and lame that they wanted the students to be at. The thing is, at the beginning of college, everyone is very, very alone. So you're going to think everyone has a bunch of friends and everyone looks so happy and you're the only one who's like suffering inside because you're all the way from Dubai. No one... And in the US, sometimes they'll ask some funky questions to you about not knowing where Dubai is. So you'll feel alone a little bit. And that same thing would happen in the UK too, just because maybe not everyone is the same as you or in the same place as you. But I will tell you that even under those smiles, everyone's panicking a lot. It's not even a little bit. Everyone's really panicking.
So how hard is it to make friends? Because you read stories or you go on the internet and you search up people and you have their stories about saying, oh yeah, I just met my best friend, we in a class one day, or we just were partners, or I just randomly approached them or something like that. So is it really that easy?
It's not that easy, but it's also not that hard. So I'm a person who loves to have a best friend with me. So even if it's not a group of friends, I love to have one best friend with me. So I got to Baylor and I was on a hunt for my best friend, right? Like every single person, I was like, you're a contender. But again, I met my friend at one of these cringy traditions because none of us had anywhere to go. Okay. So right when I got there for 3 weeks, I was telling my parents, I was crying every day. And I was telling my parents, I am transferring to Dubai. Like I will go back. I don't like it here. I want to leave. And then I went to that tradition. I built my crepe downstairs at my dorm and she was sitting there too. And I met her and she is still my best friend to this day. And it really took like 3 conversations for us to just become friends. We laughed at the same thing. And then we said, hey, should we go to another city together over the weekend? And we were like, yeah. And then we lived together the next year and then the next year and then the year after that. She was my college roommate all 3 years after, and she's still my best friend to this day. So no, it doesn't take that much time, but I will say the biggest piece of advice is go to everything. If they have really weird events that you're like, why would anyone go to this weird event? Go to it because you might meet your friends there. And you might meet people who feel they're forced to go to this event. They're going to have a lot of very unique opportunities for you to make friends. I didn't make any friends in my classes, by the way, none. I met all my friends in my dorm. I met all my friends in these traditions and then even in my sorority. So I met them in different aspects, organizations, but not in my classes. So you don't have to just say, I'm going to go to class and I'm going to be friends with my psych friends. You don't have to. I didn't have any psych friends, but you will be able to make friends all around in every part of your school.
And what's the sorority life like? So is it blonde hair, blue eyes, a lot of partying, no studying, or is it more realistic? What I
It's very weird. It's like a simulation. I literally felt like I was in a dream for 2 years, honestly. So if you go to Northeastern, if you go to Boston University, if you go to NYU, you're really taking advantage of New York and Boston and Pennsylvania, and you're taking advantage of the cities there.